Bienvenidos de regreso al Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Yo me llamo Gambi. Estoy aquí con el Don Brandon. Yeah, a little bit of a change up. That's should I do grammar school on how to say that in English?
Go.
I thought about holding out the end of your name there, and I was like, no, I'll save that for later. Although the call that the Anaheim Ducks had, they have a stream in Spanish, and they had this one call, and they called the Ducks the Patos, and now I want to call them the Patos all the time. I don't know why. It's such a better name for them. Los Patos.
Is it?
Yeah,
I still want to call them the Mighty Ducks. Stupid Disney.
Now I want to see jerseys where they have Patos on the front of their jerseys. I don't know why. Just something about it. It's just so mesmerizing. Oh man, so we've got a crazy week. The schedule is atrocious. Every team has bad schedules. Like even the teams with good schedules have technically a bad schedule. There aren't many off nights to take advantage of, but there are some players that we can recommend. But as always, let's start first with the week review. And I think that there's nowhere better to start than Draisaitl and McDavid.
Yeah. Also, for those of you that we're recording this Saturday morning, so we're not going to have information on Saturday night's games. So you'll hear this Sunday morning, but this is why we're not factoring in Saturday night's games, because we're not there yet. That's the future.
Yes, so you are listening to this very much in the future. Hello, future. I hope things are going well. So McDavid and Draisaitl are absolutely insane. I think at this point, if you were doing a redraft league today, would McDavid Draisaitl go 1-2? I feel like they would.
Which one would go 1 is the real question at this point.
I know, right? That's an interesting question. But so this actually gets into, I think, an even more interesting...
No, and a banger's like, I think I still like Ovi. he has a million hits, a million shots, and he's still doing pretty good. An interesting
conversation on Draisaitl, though, is if you were to trade for him now, what's his trade value? Would you need to actually pay, or would you pay first-round prices
sure.
to get Draisaitl?
You'd have to pay you have to pay one of the big four. I think. I don't think you get it. I don't think even Burns would trade 1-for-1 for him anymore.
Yeah,
depending on the league. I wouldn't do either side of it, which is funny. But
I'm seeing people ask if they should trade Burns away,
which is weird because he's still doing fantastic. But
yeah, I know it's a little bit of an overreaction.
Well, anyway, to go with that, I think it's time to look a little bit at what's going on with the playoff race because there are some big surprises so far. We've got Toronto and Tampa are not even in the wild card at the moment. And that's Toronto with 21 games played, the highest of all teams in, tied for the highest with a couple in the Eastern Conference. So that isn't good. And then Tampa, 16 games played. So they're actually at the lowest of all games played on the East Coast, but still at 20 points. So they're not really convincing either at 9-5-2. With their record so far, which is all right. You look at Toronto's 9-8-4, that's a lot more concerning, but still plenty of time for both of them to turn it around. And then on the West Coast, it's even weirder. We have Nashville out of a playoff spot, Vegas out of a playoff spot. Dallas is barely in wild card after a couple of good games. San Jose obviously way out of there at the moment. It's been a weird start to the season. And then on the other side of it, we've got the Islanders who are crushing for some reason again. Well, I don't know about again. They didn't exactly crush last season, but to be 13 games in a row with a point, and only one of those games went to an overtime loss is pretty insane. And then also Edmonton and Arizona, who are doing very well in the Pacific. In fact, Edmonton, Arizona, Vancouver as 1, 2, 3 in the Pacific just looks strange, to say the least.
It's not at all what you could have expected going into the season.
No, not at all.
You actually hit on one of the teams I wanted to talk about, and that's Toronto. The Leafs look bad. Like if you watched any of their games this last week, they looked bad. They looked bad in their loss to Boston. They look like a team that cannot beat good teams.
I was very annoyed with them putting in 2 goals with 2 minutes left on Varlamov and costing me a lot of points. But
yep,
yeah, I guess that's an aside.
Here's a fun fact that I saw. I think it was Myrtle that tweeted this. 2 regulation wins in their last 14 games played.
Jeez,
that's not good. That's not really, good. Really bad.
You could point some of that to not having a healthy team, I guess, but not enough of it.
I think at some point you gotta not do that, though. I think after 14 games, you're kind of looking at it and saying, what's going on here? And I mean, against Boston last night, and then remember this is Saturday morning, they had virtually a healthy team. Sure, you don't have Marner, and I guess Kerfoot was out, right? But still, man, there's got to be questions about Babcock going on right now. I know everyone is jumping on him, and there's just some weird stuff. The defensive Cody Ceci that's coming out of management. Babcock, still saying that last night was a good game. I just don't know. Toronto is scaring me a little bit. Something to me feels a little bit like a shakeup may be needed. And not so much because they're playing poorly. I do think that they play good games. The problem to me is Toronto looks like a team that can't beat good teams. Like, it just doesn't look like a team to me that's going to go into the playoffs and win.
Yeah, might not be their year. Unless things change, I guess. But having a whole healthy team is going to help regardless.
Yeah.
Okay. My last one here is it's nice to see that Timo Meier and Hertl are both breaking out with 9 points in the last 5 games each. So that line is clicking, to say the least.
I love Timo Meier almost as much as I love Evander Kane.
No, you don't.
Nah, it's not even close.
It's not close. But it's good to see those two pairing up. I mean, Meier still has that hit of not being on that more, I don't know, more explosive, I guess, power play with Kane, Couture, Hertl, and LeBanc. You'd like to see Meier slip in place of LeBanc instead of being on that second unit with Marlowe and Thornton and Gambrell and all these dudes. But that may happen at some point. LeBanc has been slow to which has been pretty prevalent lately, as he been dropped quite a bit and was a drop candidate for us last week.
Yep. And fun fact, Timo Meier is now actually back to a 53-point pace. And over his last 13 games, he's actually up to the same pace that he got last year. So rejoice, Timo Meier fans. He's back.
Hooray. Moving into the injury report, it's actually a short one, which is kind of nice, but the unfortunate part is like nobody came back. So we have Torrey Krug day-to-day with a lower body injury. We have Pavel Francouz, who played 30 seconds of a game and got just railroaded and is now in concussion protocol. Philip Hronek is day-to-day with some undisclosed. I don't know what's going on there. They have really not said much about what's happening with Hronek, but here we are. Jacob Trouba is day-to-day with an upper body injury. Sidney Crosby has a timetable now. He was out last week, but he is now officially on the IR for around 6 weeks. Tomas Hertl is day-to-day after his last game on Friday, I think, Thursday, with a minor knee issue. But anytime it's knee, it makes me a little concerned, but we'll see. Hopefully it's nothing. Alexander Kerfoot is out indefinitely after needing facial surgery. They didn't really go into what happened, as it seemed like wasn't necessarily an on-ice incident, but anyway, needed facial surgery, so that's going to be a little bit. And then finally on the return side, we've got Eric Halla returning, and Rope Hintz has not returned yet, but he's targeting Tuesday, so hopefully soon. And that's it for the injury report. Pretty short.
It's a miracle. It's a true Christmas miracle. Moving into drop candidates, I'm going to start first with the defenseman. I actually have 2 defensemen, and it was a struggle not to put like 3 or 4 on here. There's a lot of defensemen right now that are worth dropping. But I'm going to start with Jacob Slavin, defenseman.
That's my first one, too. Is this going to happen again?
Oh, my gosh. I'm telling you, we're becoming one.
No, we're
emerging.
Not. Never,
emerging
ever.
Brains. Just wait. In a few episodes, you're going to make a Patches joke, too. Jacob Slavin, 57% owned, is a minute cruncher, but he really doesn't have much to show for it. I almost want to say he's a worse Charlie McAvoy.
Yeah. He did have that 8-shot game, which I'm sure is making people really excited, but it's not.
I mean, really, if you were in a league that literally only counted shots, then Slavin is worth it. Otherwise, Slavin's not worth it.
Yep. My first one, let's see if you have this one, is Anders Lee.
I do have him.
Wow. Yeah, he basically has shown himself to be a streaky player. And as far as streamers go, I'm not going to hold on to a guy that's going to get me 55 to 60 points. That is going to be, and he's not even pacing for that, by the way. That is going to get them in bunches. I don't need that. I don't want to have weeks where I get goose eggs from a guy. So I'll stream in Lee on good matchup weeks or good schedules, where they have 4 games or whatever. But Beyond that, I'm not a long-term hold, especially for a guy that's 63% owned. That's way too high.
Yeah, I dropped him like I think I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. I dropped him. I remember that what I had said on Anders Lee was that the minutes his shots, if his shots don't come up and if his minutes start to go down, he's immediately droppable, and that's happened. His shots are down. He's now playing 15-ish minutes. It's not good.
I'd rather have Brock Nelson over him, and Nelson's like, I don't know, 30% owned or something.
I'd just rather have a streamer spot.
Right. I'm just saying, like, if you're going to stick with the Islanders for some reason, I think there's better options even there.
I can agree with that. Okay, my next one I know for a fact you do not have, and that's Darnell Nurse. Defenseman, 70% owned. If you're in a points heavy or points only league, he's absolutely droppable in my opinion.
Yeah. He got his big bonus, and he was way over projected points wise this season, as we knew he wasn't going to be. I mean, I guess there was an avenue, to be top power play, but there's a lot more competition for that top power play spot, and even for the second power play spot this season. So the odds of him being a half a point per game player again were pretty low to start with. So if you drafted Nurse, you're drafting him for peripherals. He's a pretty good shot guy, but he's also a great hits and blocks guy. He still is a great hits and blocks guy, but his shots have come down a little bit. And I think you can point some of that to him being started a little bit more defensively, which makes sense because they don't really need him in an offensive position as much as they used to.
His minutes have also come down quite a bit. He only played 17 minutes last game. And so I think that if this happens, if he starts to see less minutes, I'd say even in a banger league, he might be questionable. It's like, for example, if you're doing well in peripherals already and you think you could sacrifice him and you could stream peripherals, he might not be that worth it.
I would trade him at that point.
Yeah,
probably.
I would 100% try to trade first. But even in a banger league, I think he's getting close to drop candidate worthy. I think in a points heavy or points only league, certainly droppable. But if you're talking about a banger league, he is getting very, very close.
But he does get PIMs, which is nice.
Well, if you're in a PIMS Bangers League. If you're not in a PIMS Bangers League, then that's just another knock on him.
He also never gets face-off wins.
Shocker, I wonder why.
I can't remember who it was, but there was a defenseman that got 2 face-off wins. I thought it was surprising, but...
It was probably Will Butcher.
It was not. I want to say it was like Shattenkirk or something, but I don't remember. Anyway, all right. My last one is Jack Hughes. Center, 57%. It was fun, but I think at him being this high owned is just people hoping for the best at him being a rookie and being highly touted. He got dropped off that top line. The top line got shaken up in general. They moved him and Palmieri down to the second line. They moved Bratt up to top line with Hischier and Hall. It's just, he's not doing anything. Like, I get that he's an exciting player, but he's not shooting a ton. He's not getting points. I mean, that's what you want. And he's a streamer spot is 1,000% better than Jack Hughes in almost every league at this point.
I don't even know if I'd want, I don't know. Here's the other thing on the Devils that you have to remember now, right? Now, when you're picking up Devils, you've got to remember that at some point here, Taylor Hall's going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's virtually guaranteed now. And that immediately decreases the value of Nico Hischier, of Jack Hughes, of anybody on the top power play. I mean, at this point, if I know that Subban is a far away, chance at getting top power play, and you also know Taylor Hall is gone at some point, PK Subban becomes even more droppable, for example. And so to me, the Devils are just someone that I'm not going to place a lot of faith in going forward rest of the season.
Yeah. I don't even know who would slot into the top left wing. Gusev?
Probably.
Come
I mean, they don't really have
don't do
other
that.
options.
Don't do it.
Gosh,
oh, man.
It's brutal.
It's dark future.
I have one last one here, and this one feels kind of good, and that's Jacob Vrana. Shockingly, he's 63% owned, which is just nuts.
He only had a couple bad games, but yeah, he was super over-indexed to begin with.
But here's the thing. The thing with Vrana is that when we talked about him, we said the second he becomes droppable is when his shots go down, and they have. So even though it's been, just a few bad games, the thing that's worrying for me is that the shots are down. And the only avenue to him being relevant were those shots. He needs shot volume.
Yep.
That's a fact of the matter. And his shot volume has come down. I don't think this is a good week to drop him, though, just because of scheduling situations.
It's a good week
He'll
to
have
have
off
him.
nights.
Yeah.
It's a good week to have him, but know that he is a drop candidate. So, like, if you need to stream for the week, or let's say for whatever reason you're not starting him on those days, or after the 2 days, because I think they have early off days. It's like Tuesday and Wednesday or something like, or Monday, Wednesday, something like that. You can drop him after that. Okay, jumping into long-term targets here. My first one is going to be a potential. I just want to get this person on your radar early and just watch him and pay very close attention to what happens. And we'll be sure to also cover it on the podcast, but I want you to be careful with this guy. Don't pick him up, but he is a very potential long-term option, and that's Thatcher Demko. 24% owned. On one hand, Markstrom has looked shaky at times. They haven't gotten wins behind him. I could see more and more that I watch Vancouver games, and the more and more I watch Thatcher Demko, the more I feel like a 50-50 split is coming, or more for Demko. So I don't know exactly when it'll happen, but I really do feel like we are potentially seeing Demko take way more starts here in the near future, because Demko's playing unbelievable. He is the future for Vancouver, aside from potentially DiPietro, who they also have. But for now, I'd say keep a very close eye on Demko, because he could be a fantastic waiver goalie add at some point if he actually does get more starts.
My first one, this has come full circle, because he was on Wednesday, he was a sustainably low, is Dylan Strome. Center 35%. When we marked him as sustainably low, we were like, he might have been 2 weeks ago, actually, but we said his situation could change at any moment. If he gets back on a line with DeBrincat and Kane and on top power play, he's probably going to be addable again. And that has happened. And it has, strangely enough, it's actually working, right? So now we're seeing Strome come back with a couple of good games. Let me actually look up the point totals, because I do remember he was like pretty good in his last ones. Yep. So he got what is this? 8 points in his last 4 games. It's pretty decent. It's pretty okay. He's still not like he's a peripheral black hole, but as far as, especially in points only leagues, he's great when he's on this line, and he has been. This is where he got all of his notoriety last season, is when he played on this line, especially with DeBrincat, who they show great chemistry, and I don't know why you'd ever break him up. But now that he's there again, I like him again.
Yeah, I think I had him either on short-term or long-term last week, and I'm still high on him. As long as he's playing with Kane, he is definitely worth owning. My next one here is going to be a center in Anze Kopitar, 76% owned, so not necessarily a pickup. Although if he's on your waivers, he might be better than a center you have in a shallow league. He's on fire on a ridiculous point streak right now. In one of my leagues, he's top 20 actually, which is insane, and that's not counting faceoff wins. He's absolutely on fire, and the only person on the Kings really that's doing anything. And I could see this continuing long term. Like when I think about people trading for him or trading away for him, I wouldn't mind trading for him, because the price is probably going to be low, even though you'd be buying high. And as far as selling, I don't know if I'd sell unless you really like the package that's coming back, or you just have too many centers, because the chances are that you drafted Anze Kopitar as maybe your third or fourth center. And so in that situation, you now have the luxury of either being able to trade away a center, or you can just hold if you have the roster spots for it. But if you want to sell him, you could probably get a pretty good ransom for him. I like both directions, honestly. I like buying him if you need centers. Like if you need centers on your team, which is probably unlikely, but you never know. Sometimes that could happen. I like the idea of buying him as a center, because you're probably still going to be able to get him pretty low. People are going to be like, oh, it's the Kings, this isn't going to last. And then on the flip side of that, if you want to sell, you can probably get a decent haul for him.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know about putting a 76% owned guy on long-term targets, but sure.
Well, it's more so that I've just also seen a lot of questions in terms of like, can Kopitar keep this up? Is he for real? And I know that long-term targets is normally about picking people up, but on top of that, I think sometimes I like to put people on here too that I want to advise to hold, and that they're the real deal.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a sustainably high situation or anything like that. It's just this guy is for real. You don't need to worry or like quickly sell. It's not like a John Gabriel Pajot situation. It's right. Like this guy's good. Like you don't have to worry about him, sort of thing.
My next one is David Krejci, center 26%. I don't know that I would immediately pick him up because there are a little bit concerning things here. His ice time's not that high. His on-ice shooting is pretty high. But I think we're seeing something similar to what we saw last season with him just playing well, which is nice to see. He's always been a pretty decent point getter, but he always struggles at doing anything peripheral-wise. So this is another guy that it kind of depends on your league whether he's going to be worth owning. I don't necessarily think he's going to get 70 points, but I think he could be a 60, 65 guy. And somebody to be kind of on your radar. I'm surprised he's at 26% owned. I thought he would be a little higher than that considering what he did last season. I know he was hurt coming into the season, but I mean, he's been back. So 10 points in 13 games, not terrible.
My last one here is going to be Zach Cassian, right wing, 44% owned. As long as McDavid and Draisaitl are going off and Zach Cassian is working on that top line, Zach Cassian is worth owning. To what extent is he worth owning? Man, it's a tough question. But I do like Zach Cassian a ton while he's on that top line. Although I don't know if I'd necessarily stack all three. Like I wouldn't purposefully go and grab Zach Cassian to stack all three. But I do like him a lot.
Yeah, I agree. My last one is Jonas Donskoy. He wasn't your last one last week, was he?
No, he was not.
Left wing, right wing, 20%. He seems to be the one that's sticking on that top line, top power play. He unfortunately, I mean, he does have that hat trick game, but he's not shooting a lot, unfortunately. But being next to McKinnon should provide points pretty much no matter what. Like even Matt Calvert on the other side, for whatever reason he's there, is doing reasonably well. And Donskoy is the only one that gets to play with them at evens and on the power play. So I think especially in deeper leagues, 20%, I would take a flyer on him. You're going to risk your shots, and if you have hits and all that other stuff, you're going to risk that too. But I do think the points can come with him. He's got he's on a 60-point pace, which unless he does something different is not super sustainable, and that's on the season. Since in his last week he's scored or gotten a point per game pace in 3 games. Obviously, isn't saying a lot, but at least he's able to do something. I do want to see him shoot more, but the fact that he's playing with McKinnon should generate at least some assists and hopefully some goals going forward.
Okay, moving into the week preview, let's talk about teams that have 4 or more games first. Arizona, Detroit, Carolina, Edmonton, and Florida. And then teams with 2 or less games, for once, that's going to be none. But that's not exactly a good thing, actually. It's slightly a bad thing because of off nights. Because when you get into the off nights, normally we'll say teams with 3 or more off nights. There's none. No one has 3 or more off nights. So we had to adjust it down to teams that play 2 off days. And that's pretty much it. And that's going to be Arizona, Ottawa, Washington, and the New York Rangers. So that's all you got this week. You've got 2 off nights. And the smart thing to do is to actually not pick up one player. So there's some teams, I think it's Arizona, who has like a Monday and Sunday off night. But then there's teams with like a Monday, Wednesday, and then a Wednesday, Friday. And so there's a lot of maximizing you can do, but you're going to have to be smart about it in week, not so much like at the ends. So it depends on how your team is constructed. But my first short-term target here is going to be Mark Borowiecki, defenseman on the Ottawa Senators, 28%. And he currently has the same amount of points as Shea Theodore.
Yep, except he's got more goals somehow.
Yep.
Borowiecki has more goals.
Are you ready to say that Mark Borowiecki is better than Shea Theodore?
In bangers leagues, he definitely is at this point.
Wow, that is a.
I mean, if you have Pims, he is. But I mean, they're different players. It depends on what your team needs. But he's always been a stud in Pim banger leagues. I actually left a bunch of my players from last week because off nights, as we said, are super hard to come by, and a lot of them have the same off nights. It's Ottawa's the first one that comes to mind that they have 2 off nights. So I basically left all the players I had on here: Duclair, Connor Brown, Nemesnikov, and also added Logan Brown if you wanted more Brown. He's 1% owned, so I think he's a super deep league ad. He's looked pretty good, although he missed the widest open net I've ever seen last night. But he came back from injury, and now they have all their centers. I mean, again, not saying a whole lot, but they got Colin White and they got Logan Brown back. And Logan Brown is the one playing with Duclair and Kachuk and top power play. So I like him more than Colin White. And he's not super exciting, but at 1%, he's going to be available in a lot of super deep leagues. And it's hard to find a top power play, top line guy that actually has some sort of upside like Logan Brown does. So he's an option. I've got him in my dynasty league, but yeah. So Ottawa, just in general.
My next one is going to be Clayton Keller of the Arizona Coyotes. Left wing, right wing, 49% owned. Trust me, I do have a low owned option. But Clayton Keller is doing pretty well. He's shooting a lot more. His minutes aren't fantastic, but he looked a lot better this last week. And quite frankly, there aren't a lot of options from an off nights perspective this week. And Clayton Keller is available in a lot of my... Clayton Keller, I think... So I might be wrong in this, but what it seems like when I take a look at my leagues, he was available in all my money leagues, which was really interesting to me because normally when you have a guy that's like 49%, you'd say, okay, well, that's a guy who most likely will be like taken in my league, right? That's what you'd think. But Clayton Keller to me is one of those guys who has a little bit of name value and so actually gets held in a lot of leagues and might actually be on like an inactive team or something like that, or it's just kind of a name value guy. You're like, oh, I can't drop Clayton Keller. But then the sharper people are saying, oh, Clayton Keller is, a whatever guy. He's not that good. And they end up dropping him. And so I would actually wager that Clayton Keller is one of these weird guys where he's actually available probably in the better leagues or in the sharper leagues, I'd say, if you, let's say a really sharp owner had him. And so I'd check your waivers to see if he's available, your FA, because I was shocked that he was available in all my leagues. I didn't grab him just because I don't need him, but he could be.
Yep. He's available in a bunch of my leagues too.
Yeah.
All right. My next one is Vrana. Left wing, 63%. Good for the Monday, Wednesday. I'll also throw up another option, Lars Eller. Center 17%. Again, the off nights are impossible to come by. So if you're trying to maximize, the best thing you can do is add a Washington player for Monday, Wednesday, or I think it's Arizona is another one of the teams that plays Monday. If you really want to get crazy with it, you could add a player that plays Monday and then add from, I think it's the Rangers that play Wednesday, Friday, and then drop that player for somebody on Sunday. Either way, you're going to have to make at least 3 moves on the same streamer spot if you want to maximize, which is just bizarre. But yeah. So Washington is one of the easier teams to start with. So Vrana and Eller stick out as options if you're able to move them again on Friday and then again on Sunday. But if you just want the 2 off nights, if you have 2 streamer spots, you can just grab any of the teams that have 2 off nights and you'll be decent instead of having to do the constant switching. Or you could do it both. Yep. You could use 2 streamer spots and do the constant switching and wind up with like 6 starts or something total.
Yep, that makes sense. And I've got here to finish off 2 Rangers, Adam Fox and Capo Caco. Adam Fox is a defenseman, 9% owned. Capo Caco, right wing, 49% owned. I'll start with Adam Fox, playing top power play, looking really good. And when you look at the pairings for the Rangers, Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren has been the best pairing, hands down, so far from a Corsi 4 percentage perspective. So they've been really, really good, driving the offense really well. They've been starting to get more 5-on-5 minutes. And so while everyone, for a while was paying attention to Tony DeAngelo, Adam Fox came up from under and stole his thunder, but everyone continued to pay attention to Tony DeAngelo. So also we did a hot hands on Adam Fox, so be sure to go watch that to get a little bit more insight or listen to that. It's on the podcast as well. But Adam Fox is a really good option to me this week with the off nights. Jacob Trouba is also now injured, so you probably are going to see Adam Fox, if that is for a while, we'll probably see Adam Fox get even more power play time and even more 5-on-5 time. I'd assume that the Adam Fox-Ryan Lindgren pairing takes the top billing, while Libor Hayek moves to either the second or the third, depending on who the hell they pair him with, which is not going to be good because there's just nobody really good for the Rangers. And then Capo Caco shooting a lot more, looking really good on the power play. He looks like he's really heating up, and not from the perspective of long term because there's just so much uncertainty with Zibanejad. I don't think I can call anyone on the Rangers a long term ad until Zibanejad comes back, because until he does, we don't really know how the lines are going to shake out. But Caco looks really, really good. When you compare him to the beginning of the season, right now he looks on fire, really confident with the puck. And from an advanced analytics perspective, he was the worst Rangers player through the first 10 games or whatever it was. And now he's looking a lot better. And game over game, he is becoming more and more kind of the best puck mover for the Rangers. And if that continues to be the case, it would only make sense that he continues to get more minutes. And as he gets more confident, I think we could see more goals. But he is shooting more. And so as a short-term option this week, I think he's a pretty good one.
Okay, I got a couple more. So let's move into Ottawa. You already mentioned Keller was on my list. I got 2 more from there. Jacob Chychrun.
Ottawa.
No, not Ottawa. Arizona. I got 2 more from there. Still looking at the top here. Jacob Chychrun, defense, 8%. Talked about him repeatedly so far, getting that top power play shot. Kind of slowed down his pace over the last couple of games, but at 8% and with a decent schedule next week, which decent is as good as it gets, I still kind of like him. And I'm going to hang on to him in the leagues that I have him. And then the last option here, one of the weirder ones, is Carl Soderberg. Center 4%, playing with Kessel, which hasn't, meant much so far this season, but also top power play and getting good minutes. So he's not a super exciting player, but at 4%, he's somebody you might be able to find in deep leagues where you're really going to be struggling to find those extra starts, and everybody's going to be hunting down the same players. The Kellers, the Chykrins, the Vranas are all going to be harder to find. But you might be able to scoop up Soderberg and still wind up with a decent week out of him.
And there you go. That is the week preview. There's not a lot to go off of this week, but you can be really smart about it. You can be really smart about it. Yep. There's a lot of start options. We may have to do some live streams during the middle of the week too, honestly, to help some people out. Anyways, there you go. So pay attention. Maybe there'll be some midweek live streams to help you set lineups. If not, pay attention to some hot hands and bust watches. Blake Wheeler may be featuring on one of them soon. Just saying.
I've got one more little aside.
Oh.
If you have not already checked it out, go to fantasyhockeypodcast.com/tools and look at the off nights tool. Not this coming week, but the one following it. Most tools are incorrect about what's an off night for that week. Yeah. It's Thanksgiving week. Things are weird. Monday, Wednesday, Friday are all heavy game nights, and Tuesday is an off night. Tuesday and Thursday are off nights. So it's backwards. A lot of the tools just consider Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday always off nights. Not the case, especially not the week following this. So use our tool. It was built by ZeroGar in Discord. If you're not in Discord, check that out too. You can find that on the website as well, fantasyhockeypodcast.com. And yeah, it does off nights correctly. How about that?
Woo!
Woo! All right, thanks for listening.